Okay, I think we might start and sort of break all the conference rules and actually start officially on time, which is a good start. First of all, welcome everybody to this session. You may have seen me on telly, but in case you haven't, I'm Natalie Bennett, leader of the Green Party of England and Wales, and I'm delighted to be chairing this session. Just to start with a couple of housekeeping things, because I've been trained to do this, the emergency exits are at each end, and you probably know better than I do where the loos are, so I'll leave you to work that one out. What we're talking about here today, as I'm sure you all know, is the position of the EU in protecting workers' rights. But I can't start without just making some very brief reference to the fact that we're living in very exciting times. And I think we're really seeing the political plates shifting. I have been telling everyone, every journalist I get the chance to speak to, that future historians may well look back and see this as the start of the end of neoliberal Britain, the end of the neo-Thatcherite era. And so I think that's very exciting. And it's a very exciting time to, I hope today we can look at not just what the EU's done, but also what it might do in a different political climate, the possibilities, what we can achieve. Because I always like to look on the positive side of these things. And we've just been talking about the dreadful, disastrous trade union bill. But I think what we need to do, as well as fighting all of that bill, is we really need to be celebrating what trade unions contribute, both in terms of democracy representing their members, but also in terms of a strong economy, a balanced economy, a fair economy, a less unequal economy. So we've got, as you probably know, 3 speakers today. Now, the first speaker is going to be Sally Hunt from the UCU. She has to go off, to dash off. So what we're going to do is ask Sally to speak, and then if anyone has any particular questions they'd like to address to Sally, we'll take questions to her at that point. And then we'll move on with our other 2 speakers. So I kind of have a feeling in this room actually Sally really needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. She's the General Secretary of the UCU, representing lecturers in further adult and higher education. And the UCU, as I'm sure everyone knows, has been strongly supportive of anti-austerity campaigns and the People's Assembly, and supports the campaign for 1 million climate jobs. I spoke recently at a UCU gathering just before the election in London, and what I found is there's a lot of people who are really determined to change things, to get a fairer society, thinking about not just themselves but their pupils and their future. So I'm delighted to hear what Sally's got to say on the issue of EUs and workers' rights.
Thank you, Natalie. Actually, the last time that you and I spoke was at the People's Assembly demonstration in London, however long ago that was, and it was the first time I'd seen Natalie post the election, and she'd actually turned back into someone who looked like a human being who'd slept, which was rather nice to say, and say actually good, you've come back into the world again. I very much wanted to say thank you before I even start on anything else for the invitation from the Green Party, and to explain why, as the UCU General Secretary, I was very pleased to be able to say yes. And this is where I have to start by being very clear about what my union is. What I like to introduce the University and College Union as is a international and global trade union. And the reason for that is that though our members are based within the UK, our profession is one that takes and gives people to different universities, different colleges, and sends people to different countries through our education system and works with people throughout the world. And on that basis, we have always felt that any debate which is around European issues was one that we should have in a very open and candid way. Second thing, though, that I then need to say is that my union is very particular about the fact that we aren't affiliated to any political party, and that we won't be telling our members how they should vote in any particular referendum, i.e. in, out, yes, no, whatever definitional wording they choose to come up with. And there is a reason for that, that the people that I represent are very particular about having their own views, and don't take it well if their union seeks to impose a view on something as important as this. But what I wanted to do today was to start by saying that what we do understand in UCU is solidarity, and what the Green Party have always given us, yourself, Natalie, Caroline and many others, has been solidarity on all the issues where we have been fighting austerity, where we have been fighting job cuts, and on that basis, happy to be on any platform that the Greens invite us to participate in, because that's what you do. You give back to those who work with us, and that's something that we're very pleased to do. So, long preamble from someone who is therefore saying she's not going to tell you how to vote. She ain't a member of the Green Party, but at the same time she's got some things that she thinks or hopes might stimulate some discussion, because what I am is a trade unionist all my life, an internationalist all my life, and a socialist all my life. And it's from that I want to approach the commentary today. So let's just start by dragging ourselves back 50 years to the first referendum on Europe. Jack Jones, Hugh Scanlon and many others campaigning within the trade union movement for a no vote. Why were they doing that? Because they thought that the European Economic Community would be a rich man's club, and it would have the threat or the ability to stop democratically elected governments from being able to pursue their policies. And they had some very clear and strong arguments, and it was something that was strongly supported by many in the trade union movement. So then we go on 50 years to today, and as you all know, many in the Labour movement have shifted that viewpoint. Many in the Labour movement now have dramatically changed where they are, and there are reasons for that. I mean, the most obvious one is 16 years of a Tory government does tend to make you look around for your friends and allies, and you seek them in strange places, but where you find them, you hold on to them. And that has been a key point for many people who are trade unionists in terms of how they have perceived what the European Union has done. Second has been the introduction of, from that, some progressive legislation at EU level, which has impacted on women, it's impacted on part-timers, it's impacted on many, many vulnerable groups who otherwise would have had a much harder time asserting their equal rights within the British legal system. It's also about looking at the change in working practices, where we now have the understanding, and I think the debates around refugees and immigration at the moment are making this much more focused, but it has become much more understood and accepted that as people within this country, we have free movement across Europe, and the impact that has had on our culture, our economy, our industry has been profound, because that has changed some of the implicit things that we believe are going to take place in our lifestyles. So, little doubt that I'd say that as we move towards this referendum, there is going to continue to be debate across the piece, and there's certainly going to be debate, I would say, within the left, and there is a reason for that. For all the positives that I've just mentioned, you then have to put alongside that what the European Union did in terms of TTIP, what they did in terms of other international trade agreements, the position they have taken, which has been very against the needs and rights of workers who are going to be actively undermined by many of the agreements that the EU is trying to push through. You look at what's happened in Greece, and you look at the role that the Greek trade unions took, where they tried to influence their government tried to influence the European Union, the left across Europe tried to place pressure on the European Union, but it was very much the European Union that was seen as being a repressive force in terms of what the Greek people were asked to sign up to. But my instinct is that if we look at what David Cameron is going to be doing and what he's already been squirreling around Europe trying to achieve, he's trying to use the whole debate around what the European Union should be as an excuse for undermining workers' rights, pulling back workers' rights, trying to make it possible for those arguments to be linked as ones that sit alongside the positives for staying in Europe, i.e. we will only as a country be in that at the cost and price of people who we represent in the trade union movement. So that, I think, of itself says that we, within the trade union movement, cannot simply sit and await outcomes from different political organisations, different groupings. We ourselves, whether we are going to say yes, whether we're going to say no, have to start the debate that starts constructing what we believe the European Union should be for those people we represent. And I would say that it does have to include freedom of movement for people, and that should not be on the basis of do they have a job or not. That has to be one of the fundamentals we look at. It has to have within it clear and proactive policies, particularly when you look at the mismatch between resources in the north, in the south. It has to have real policies that will look to address what is not taking place for youth unemployment across the piece throughout Europe in a way that has to be addressed on a European-wide level. It has to have a debate about what the European Union does vis-a-vis trade and engagement with the rest of the world. Is it about making sure there are barriers, making it more difficult for those wanting to come into Europe to do so, or is it about spreading engagement on a political and an industrial level that actually promulgates policies that are going to promote peace, that are going to promote industrial cooperation, that are going to promote jobs? Just some thoughts to start this debate. In my union, we are absolutely dependent on international collaboration, both in higher and further education. Without what is taking place in terms of overseas students coming into our country, coming into our colleges, coming into our universities, there would be a serious lack of resources for those I represent. On the most basic level, as a General Secretary of UCU, I have a direct interest in making sure that the debate around whether the European Union is relevant and is right for the people we represent is not turned into an excuse to close down what is an important source both of income and in terms of academic excellence for and within the sectors in which we operate. So for us, what we want to see from political parties, what we like about what the Greens are saying, is that we have to engage. We should not be embarrassed or frightened or deal with this little England culture that is being actively encouraged by this government. What we should do, though, is be a critical friend to the structures that are there, recognise the positives, but recognise also if we are to sit in this room in 18 months' time looking back on the decisions that people have made, we have to know that as trade unionists we put working people's rights, working people's views at the centre of any arguments that are going to take place. Thank you.